Welcome to Everlasting Talk. Hello and welcome to Everlasting Talk. I'm your host, Ever, and today in the Biography series, we're talking about Al Capone. Before we get started, make sure to check out my link tree below. You can check out my Instagram, like, subscribe, and follow, X, Twitch, YouTube, Blogger, on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more, and also on Kick. I'm not recorded there yet, but I'm on Kick as well. Thank you guys for joining me, and let's get started. Also, check out my merch on spring.com. Make sure to get your gear, help support me getting better equipment, and overall, make me want to keep doing this. All right. So today we're doing a biography here on Al Capone. Al Capone is one of the most infamous crime bosses in history, especially in Chicago, from 1925 to 1931. Al Capone, also known as Alphonse Gabriel Capone, was born on January 17, 1899, in Brooklyn, New York. Capone's parents immigrated from Naples, Italy, to the United States in 1893. He was the fourth of nine children. His father, Gabriel, was a barber, and his mom, Teresa, a seamstress. Capone will end up going to school until the sixth grade. Eventually, he was expelled for hitting a female teacher in the face. After his schooling, unfortunately abruptly ended, he ended up taking odd jobs, anything from working in a candy store, at a bowling alley, and other jobs as well. This is where he would turn into a life of crime, especially being a young kid, not not having any direction. He would end up joining two gangs which were known for vandalism and petty crime. Eventually, he would join the James Street Boys that was run by Johnny Torrio, who eventually became a top crime boss in Chicago down the road. Torrio would be a mentor to Capone and join the Five Points gang at age 16. He would get the name Scarface after getting into a fight where he got cut with a knife or a blade across his part of his face on his cheek. And eventually he would end up getting involved in a deadly game of craps, killing one. He was eventually questioned by the police, but without evidence or witnesses looking to come forward because afraid of getting themselves attacked as well, retaliation. He was let go. Eventually, he would leave New York to go to Chicago in 1919 to help Torrio, who was already left New York 10 years earlier, to run a crime organization. Torrio had the largest organized crime group in Chicago, and as prohibition began, bootlegging operations began as well. Torrio would eventually exile to Italy after doing a short stint in prison, leaving a vacuum of power where Capone would go begin his rise as the crime boss of Chicago. Him or allegedly get involved in multiple murders, gambling, assaults, battery, and more, always getting left unpunished for his crimes. He was most infamous for his February 14th, 1929 event called the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, where Capone's men gunned down with machine guns seven members of Bugs Moran's gang in Chicago's north side. He didn't go to jail, but next month or so, he was arrested as weapon charges. For weapons charges, he got in Philadelphia. Eventually, he ended up serving a 1 year sentence. He was released eventually on March 1930, but then the next month he got arrested in Miami Beach for vagrancy. After a 3-day trial in July, he was found not guilty. Also, later on, he got charged with other things but got light sentences. So, yeah, he was always doing crime throughout his life, but he was also getting off or getting short sentences, especially with the allegedly all these murders that were committed. Some he probably got away with a lot of a lot of murders. He was not even indicted or questioned about the St. Valentine's Day massacre. That's how much power he had in Chicago. Um, but all things come to an end when eventually in 1931 He got charged with tax evasion, 22 counts to be exact. So you could do all these crimes, but when it comes to paying the government, they don't let you off that easy. With not paying the government, they'll come after you. Everything else, then he got light sentence or nothing. But with tax evasion, he got sentenced. So on June 6, 1931, he pled guilty to income tax evasion. To serve 2.5 years in Atlanta, Georgia. While he was in Atlanta, he in prison in Atlanta, he got diagnosed with syphilis and gonorrhea. A couple years later, in 1934, he would be moved to Alcatraz. That's when Alcatraz first opened. So he's one of the first infamous people to join the prison population in Alcatraz. While his prison stint, he was stabbed. But obviously, he survived. It was technically a retaliation, I think, for revenge that one of his associates, you know, hurts this guy's family member or something, and he got retaliation on Capone. While he was at Alcatraz, eventually doctors were noticing his syphilis symptoms would affect his mental health as he would kept experiencing dizziness, memory loss, and other symptoms as well. Um, with these symptoms, by 1939, he was released from prison or paroled, and he would seek out treatment, but the damage to his brain was already done and not reversible due to syphilis. Um, He would also get one of the first vaccines, but like I said, the damage was not reversible, so it would not really cure him. The following years, he would end up in Palm Beach, Florida. Uh, you know, after having very, very bad health on January 21st, 1947, he suffered a stroke. He would fall into a coma and died on January 25th, 1947, 4 days later, due to heart failure. He would be buried in Chicago, but people thought they would dig up the grave, so they moved his body to Hillside, Illinois, in a cemetery. So yeah, I mean, this person, Al Capone, is one of the most infamous people during the Prohibition era. One of the most famous people in Chicago. Crime was very rampant during Prohibition. Eventually, they abolished Prohibition. And that's when I think he was at the height of the prohibition. Al Capone was worth $100 million at that time, so now it might be like $1 billion in today's money, something like that. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely a controversial figure, especially infamous figure in Chicago. There's a gangsters tour in the city of Chicago. People do, like all the people, all the crime bosses, and obviously with him being in prison, and his death, a vacuum was left for other crime bosses to take over. So that's when turf wars will start again, and then eventually, that kind of, would turn it into, this mafia kind of stuff kind of went down in Chicago, but still around. But yeah, I mean, if anything, I do recommend some things you guys could watch or read. There's a movie, I mean, called Capone, starring Tom Hardy from 2020. You could check out. Untouchables, from 1987, has Robert De Niro playing as Al Capone, so check that out. That'd be kind of cool. Also, you could check out these books I looked into, read. Al Capone, a biography by Luciano Orizo. Tales of Alcatraz, a series. There's a bunch of them. There's like 4 or 5 of them by Jennifer Chondeco. There's another one called Mr. Capone by Robert Schoenberg. And there's another book you could check out, Al Capone: The Biography of a Self-Made Man by Fred D. Paisley. Well, yeah, check out those books and movies. Obviously, there's other books and movies to check out as well. Check out your local library. Check out on, you know, streaming services as well. But those are some of that I recommend. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me today on this episode of Al Capone. Especially for me being from Chicago area, this one's close to me and stuff like that. Especially, I wasn't around in 1939, but it is involving a city I live nearby. Obviously, I live in the burbs. But yeah, check that out. And if anything, thank you guys so much for joining me. On the next episode, stay tuned. We're talking about Wolfgang Amadeus. So be on the lookout for that. Check out my social media pages on Instagram, YouTube, X, Twitch, Kick, Blogger, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Check out my my merch store on Spring. Everything, all that goes to getting better equipment and stuff like that. And I love your support. I might start a Patreon or buy me a coffee down the line, but who knows? But thank you guys so much for joining me, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of Everlasting Talk. For more content, follow us on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at Everlasting Talk. Thank you.